Tonight, we're not just going to talk about history, we're going to live it. You, yes, you, are about to be dragged 3,000 years into the past, not as a pharaoh, not as some chiseled warrior, but as something far more cursed, a government employee with a pickaxe. In this video, you're going to discover what it really meant to be part of an ancient Egyptian tomb crew, the people who dug, painted, carved, and quite literally risked everything to build the eternal mansions of the dead. We'll show you the grime, the glory, the gods, the grit, and why you probably wouldn't survive more than a day on the job. Trust me, this isn't your classroom's version of Egypt. If you're into falling asleep to the sound of existential dread, carved in hieroglyphs, poetic visuals of men suffocating in sacred shafts, and dark jokes about beer for breakfast diets, you're in the right tomb. So grab a torch and maybe hit subscribe, because if you don't, you might just end up sealed in before the next episode. You wake up in the underworld at 4 a.m. You wake up sweating, even though it's not hot. It's pitch black, not city blackout dark. No, this is primordial darkness, like someone scraped the stars off the sky and smothered you in what was left. You're underground, alive, kind of. You're not a mummy yet, but you are one of the living who serve the dead. Welcome to the morning shift, rookie. You're now part of the Pharaoh's tomb crew. There is no snooze button. The air is dense with the scent of limestone dust, sweat, and something else, faint, metallic. Your fingers find your torch. Flint strikes, and the chamber flickers to life. Gods stare down from the walls, painted faces, all-seeing eyes, rows of jackals and serpents, frozen in mid-devour. Their glares say, "Don't mess this up. You won't." Probably, this isn't a cursed crypt yet, but it's definitely the last place you'd want to get locked in. The narrow shafts, the whispering tunnels, the traps still under construction. They're not just for robbers. Sometimes they're for you. You live in Deir el Medina, and live is generous. Let's rewind before your next panic attack. You don't wake up inside a tomb every day. Your actual home is Deir el Medina, a closed-off village carved into the desert's ribs, where the elite tomb builders of Egypt eat, sleep, worship, and get suspiciously quiet when anyone mentions what they really saw last night. It's a government-issued neighborhood. Think ancient workplace housing, perks, free beer, grain rations, and a burial somewhere that isn't just a sandpit. Downsides: no privacy, no vacation, no forgiveness for mistakes. Your neighbors, artists, masons, engineers, scribes, pickaxe, philosophers, men who can hammer out the face of Ra by candlelight and then die of a tooth infection. You are one of these servants in the place of truth, which sounds noble until your boss yells at you for chiseling a falcon god's beak at the wrong divine angle. You wake with the sun or the shouting. Your morning routine: warm barley beer, rock-hard bread, and a full-body rinse of dread. Then it's miles of hiking through the cliffs toward your assigned doom site. Yes, you hike to your grave every morning. Very on brand. Your job title: grave interior designer, who might get buried with the client. No, really, your job is tomb logistics. One day, you're carving Osiris into a chamber wall with unsettling precision. The next, you're mixing black, pigment with crushed soot and oil, and trying to get just the right terrifying look in Anubis's eye. No Photoshop, no undo button. If you mess up a hieroglyph, even a single stroke, you might change soul into cow or afterlife into very hungry ghost. That's not just a typo, that's a curse on everyone. And if the overseer catches you slacking, you'll be reported to the scribe, who documents everything on palm fiber records that last longer than your body will. The tomb's architecture is brutally complex. Long descending shafts, false passages to confuse robbers, secret chambers, and cosmic diagrams carved in stone to guide the soul through the underworld, all while you work with bronze tools holes on quartzite walls, your fingers cracked, bleeding, your lungs full of ancient dust, your eyes adjusted to the dark so well that daylight feels like violence. And the best part, once the tomb is finished, you might just be sealed in to protect it. Its job, security for eternity, the heat, the hunger, the haunting. You're 26 years old, which means in ancient Egypt, you're basically middle-aged. Congratulations. Your joints pop like dried papyrus. You haven't seen rain in months. Your last real bath was more ceremonial than cleansing. Your hands are covered in pigment stains and open sores. You barely flinch anymore when a scorpion skitters past your leg. You're used to hallucinations in the tunnels from dehydration or maybe something else. Something watching. You're painting the Book of the Dead across the walls, depicting souls navigating crocodile-headed demons, fiery lakes, and judgment scales. You start to wonder, are you illustrating their journey or practicing for your own? The torchlight dances, and for a moment, you swear one of the gods moves. But you don't have time to dwell. There's work to do. Always more walls to smooth, spells to inscribe, gods to please. The afterlife doesn't decorate itself. And then, a crack. You're in the deepest chamber now. You and 3 others, all covered in grime, carving out the burial shaft's edge. You're halfway through a depiction of Ra sailing across the stars when it happened. Crack. A long, low groan echoes above. Dust falls like ash. The rock creaks. You freeze. Everyone does, because you know that sound. Someone dropped a torch. Another starts whispering a protection spell under his breath. Then the ceiling trembles. You run. The tunnels twist like intestines. You claw through the dark, tripping over debris, slamming into half-finished murals. Behind you, a thunderous thud. Then, silence. You made it out. Barely. But the room behind you, gone. Weeks, maybe months, of work, buried. Possibly with one of your crew inside. The overseer won't mourn. He'll just assign someone else to dig out the collapse. Maybe you. Stone walls, soft throats. Welcome to tomb politics. You survived the collapse. Lucky you. That makes you one of the few. And now, something worse happens. Paperwork, not papyrus for storytelling or spells. This is bureaucratic revenge. Your overseer reports the cave-in to the scribe, who logs the incident with all the emotion of a brick. You're not the victim here. Oh no, you might be held responsible for improper excavation angles, which is hilarious because the geometry was drawn by a man who believes stars are literal holes in the sky. But you don't argue. Arguing means attention, and attention. That's the one thing more dangerous than a falling ceiling. You bow, you apologize, and you get back to work. After all, the tomb won't finish itself, though many here believe it wants to. You're a cog in a divine machine. Let's talk about gods, because they're everywhere, watching you from the walls, sitting silently in the minds of your crew, whispered about over bowls of beer and goat stew. You don't just carve their likenesses, you practically breathe them in. Every chisel stroke, every color pigment, every incantation must be perfect, not for the pharaoh, but for the gods who will be inspecting your work for eternity. Messes aren't forgiven. They're punished with illness, with madness, with mysteriously vanishing in the night. You're not carving art. You're carving functioning technology for the soul. One misplaced symbol, and the king god pass into the afterlife, which means you'll be spiritually audited by a jackal-faced demon at best, or just tossed into the Nile for being a cosmic disappointment. And you know this because one of your crewmates, Sechem, hasn't shown up for 3 days. Nobody asks. Trust is a delusion, especially after dark. In Deir el Medina, your crew is your family, and also your competition. They share your tools, your meals, your gossip, and sometimes your fate. You all know the rules. Don't speak the pharaoh's name in vain. Don't ever talk about what's sealed behind that chamber door. And never, never take home anything from the tomb, because the moment you pocket a trinket, just a shard of faience or a chipped amulet, you've crossed a line that no god or mortal can protect you from. Still, people do it. Greed makes you stupid, and fear makes you clever. So sometimes when the moon is high, a man might sneak back toward the cliff just to check his tools. Sometimes his sandals are missing in the morning. You learned early not to ask too many questions. You just keep your eyes low, your hands busy, and your secrets buried deeper than the sarcophagus you're building. Beer is breakfast. Paranoia is lunch. Food isn't just fuel. It's a ritual. You line up each morning for your ration. Flatbread baked in ash, salted fish, onions if you're lucky, and beer thick enough to chew. Yes, even the children drink it. Not because it's fun, because water is unpredictable, and bacteria isn't poetic. It's not just food, it's politics. Miss your ration. Someone's sending a message. Get extra beer. Someone wants something. There's a whole caste system to these meals. The overseers eat better. The scribes eat separately. The priests, oh, the priests, eat like they've never met poverty. You eat fast under the sun, watching the cliffs, watching for dust clouds that signal another collapse, watching for shadows that aren't supposed to move. Don't fear death, they say. Fear the scribe. You've probably heard of Egyptian scribes. You imagine wise men with ink-stained fingers and poetic souls. Forget that. The scribes here are accountants with divine power. They document your hour, your accidents, your output, your complaints, and every idle comment that could be seen as heresy. Complain about the heat, that's a mark. Mention that maybe Ra isn't really watching the hallway. Another mark. You're not just writing history, you're living under surveillance. And if your name ever makes it into the wrong scroll, erasure. Not just fired, not just dead, erased. No tomb, no name, no afterlife. You'll vanish from memory, from lineage, from time itself, carving eternity with broken tools. Back to the job. You've been assigned a corner of the burial chamber that's supposed to represent the Duat, Egyptian hell, basically. It's a cosmic obstacle course full of snake-headed ferrymen, flaming swords, and something called the Devourer. Sounds cool, feels prophetic. You're carving with tools that wouldn't pass as camping gear in the modern world. Bronze against stone. Your knuckles bleed. Your back locks up halfway through the second serpent. The torchlight flickers again, and you feel something brush your ankle. You tell yourself it's your imagination. That's what they all say. 2 weeks ago, a painter named Hekanacht claimed he saw a shadow follow him home. Laughed it off. By morning, he was gone. The next day, nobody mentioned him again. Not out of cruelty, out of fear. Names have power. So do whispers. You dream of collapse. At night, you sleep on a reed mat, swaddled in dust and exhaustion. You dream of falling walls, of gods with insect legs, of pharaohs still alive, screaming to be let out of their tomb. Sometimes you dream of modern things, though you don't know what they are. Glass boxes that glow, houses without sand, a room that flushes your waste with water. It feels like magic and like sin. Then you wake up, still in your little mud brick room, still covered in pigment, still alive. For now, a secret passage, a secret curse. You've been moved to a new assignment, a hidden annex chamber, buried behind a false wall. Only a few of the crew know about it. It's not in the blueprints. It's not for the king. You weren't supposed to see it, but now you have. And what you saw in there doesn't match the style of anything else. Different glyphs, crude, old, almost primal. Not from this dynasty, maybe not from this world. You weren't allowed to ask questions, but the overseer's face told you everything. He's afraid too. Finishing the doom means starting the nightmare. You've been working on this tomb for 6 years now. You've buried brothers, burned your fingers on torches, whispered apologies to stone gods you're not even sure exist anymore. And today, the overseer announces the burial chamber is complete. No cheers, no festival, just a silence so sharp it could split granite, because everyone knows what comes next. You think you're almost done. You're not. You'd assume that finishing the tomb means packing up, heading home to your wife and sunburnt kids, maybe dying in peace before your spine liquefies. Wrong. Now begins the ritual of sealing, a process so sacred, so secretive, even the priests argue over how much to pretend they understand. You're not just sealing a room, you're sealing a God-King soul into the underworld, a soul that might change its mind mid-process, a soul that might resent the craftsmanship. You thought you were a builder, now you're a midwife to the divine, and if anything goes wrong, it's not just your job at stake, it's your afterlife, tomb security, ancient Egypt's FBI, CIA, and mafia rolled into one. Let's talk logistics. Once the pharaoh dies, and that could be any moment now. Rumor says he's coughing blood and seeing talking cats. The tomb must be ready instantly, which means the seal has to be dry, the traps reset, the offerings staged, and the inscriptions flawless. Who's in charge of all that? Not you. You're just the hands. The mind behind this orchestration is the high priest of Anubis, a man with black paint smeared over his face, a jackal mask, and a tendency to appear behind you without footsteps. He doesn't speak to workers. He speaks to scribes, who speak to overseers, who glare at you. He also doesn't blink. You've checked. When he walks into the tomb for final inspection, the room temperature drops. Or maybe that's just your body going cold. You're asked to do something, quietly. 3 nights before the sealing, your overseer pulls you aside. No ceremony, no torches, just the chamber needs an extra compartment. Behind the western wall, you nod. No questions, but your stomach nods, because that wall was already declared sacred and finished. Altering it, that's basically graffiti on a god's face. Still, you and 2 others sneak back after hours. Tools wrapped in linen, prayers whispered. Under breath, you carve a hidden space. Small, deep, unnatural. It's not for the pharaoh, it's for something else. Inside, you place a box wrapped in 7 layers of linen. You weren't allowed to look inside, but it smelled like copper and rot and wrong. The chamber is sealed by morning. You act like nothing happened, but now your dreams include screaming from behind stone. The ritual begins, and so does the madness. The pharaoh dies. Trumpets sound in Thebes. The city weeps. But up here on the cliffside, things move fast. The body arrives, wrapped in gold-leaf, heavier than 10 men. Priests wail songs older than the pyramids. And you help slide him into the sarcophagus. A moment so thick with dread, you feel your heart skip. You think that's the worst part. It's not. It's the next 3 days. Because the tomb must be consecrated word by sacred word, image by sacred image. Each god must be named, appeased, flattered. Each demon must be warned. The soul is protected. Back off. And if any syllable is wrong, if any pigment smudges, if any candle goes out, they say the soul will remain here forever. You'd laugh, but your mouth is too dry. Something is watching, and it's not the priests. On the second night, one of your fellow carvers, Mena, collapses in the hallway, foaming at the mouth, whispering an old kingdom dialect no one's spoken for 1,000 years. The high priest just nods. The chamber accepts his offering. You never see Mena again. You keep working. You don't blink. You don't speak unless spoken to. You realize this isn't just architecture. This is theater for the dead. And something is in the audience. Traps that aren't just traps. You always assumed the tomb traps were for grave robbers. Pitfalls, stone slabs, poisoned darts. But now, you're sealing them from inside, and you realize something awful. Some traps aren't meant to keep people out. They're meant to keep something in. One tunnel is collapsed deliberately. Another is flooded with tar. The scribes mark a passage as false door. You know it leads somewhere, but it's painted over, cursed in hieroglyphs so dense. You get nauseous just reading them. You feel it behind the walls, breathing, waiting. The last door closes, and your name disappears. Finally, it's done. The stone door, carved with Ra, Osiris, and Anubis in perfect symmetry, is lowered into place. Chants echo off the limestone. You hear weeping, some of it from the priests. Then the overseer turns to you. He pulls out a small hammer, and with practiced care, he chisels your name off the wall. You were listed as a builder. Now you are nothing. No one must know you were here. No one must know what was buried. You leave with your tools and your silence. Or, if you're unlucky, you never leave at all. Back to the village. But you're not the same. Dar el Medina welcomes you like a ghost. Children avoid you. Dogs growl. You sit with your family. You eat your salted fish. You laugh when required, but you flinch at shadows. You sleep with a blade. You hear stone grinding in your dreams. The priests say your work was perfect, but something inside you knows. You didn't seal the tomb. You opened something. You died. And that's when the real work begins. Congratulations. You're dead. No, seriously. Your lungs collapsed last night, age 39. Pretty good run, honestly. That's like 83 in ancient Egyptian builder years. But guess what? You're still not done with the tomb, because in Egypt, death isn't the end. It's administration. Welcome to the afterlife onboarding process, a red tape nightmare of cosmic proportion, where you're the applicant, the defendant, and the product, all in one. You wake up, sort of. It's not like a dream. It's not like real life. You're floating, standing, walking, somehow all at once. You look down, and your body is there, but also not there. It's glowing, slightly, smells like lotus and linen. You see yourself on the bier, wrapped, painted, perfect. Your wife is weeping. Your oldest son places bread and beer next to your feet. Good. You remembered the beer. Yes, even kids drank beer. Egyptian hydration 101. And then you blink and you're somewhere else. The Duat. Bureaucracy meets nightmare. Welcome to the Duat, the Egyptian underworld. If you were expecting fire and brimstone, sorry. The Duat is more like an airport built by hallucinating gods, with a flair for labyrinths. Mountains that shift, rivers that bleed, gates guarded by lions with knives for eyes, snakes the size of oxen coiling through lakes of darkness. Ooh, and 42 deities waiting to ask if you picked your nose in temples. You are not judged just once. You are judged 42 times. Each god rules over one specific sin. Did you steal bread? Did you speak when you shouldn't? Did you pollute the Nile with your unclean hands? You have to say no to all of them. Lie, they'll know. And if you fail, they feed your soul to Ammit, a crocodile lion hippo monster that does not believe in second chances. The journey to Osiris is the real final exam, assuming you dodge dismemberment by snake gods and don't get eaten by Ammit. You still have to reach Osiris, the judge of all souls. But first, you cross the lake of fire. Yes, fire. You're not allowed a boat. You have to walk, reciting spells, dodging spirits, resisting the temptation to lie down and surrender. It smells like hot tar and your worst memory. Your feet aren't burned, but your mind is. You hear your own voice, yelling at your children, muttering curses at supervisors, complaining about the pay. The Duat is alive, and it is personal. It doesn't want you to succeed. You face the weighing of the heart. Finally, you reach Osiris. He sits on a throne of gold, flanked by Isis and Nephthys, silent and shimmering. Before him stands Thoth, the ibis-headed scribe, ready to record your fate. And there's the scale. On one side, your heart. On the other, the feather of Ma'at, goddess of truth, order, balance. Your heart is placed gently, pulsing still. You hold your breath, or you would, if you had lungs. If your heart is heavier than the feather, it means you were impure, selfish, arrogant, cowardly, corrupt. Emmett licks her lips. But you've lived your life in service. You built a tomb with reverence. You fed your family. You feared the gods. The scale tilts and rests. Balance. You have passed. Eternity. Not what you expected. So, what now? They don't hand you a harp and a cloud. Instead, your reward is farming. No, joke. You're given land, fields, water. You are handed a shapti, a little clay figurine who does work for you when you don't feel like harvesting barley in the afterlife. This is your paradise, a second chance at life, without pain or death, sunlight, family, peace. But here's the twist. Sometimes you dream of the tomb, not just the one you built, but all of them. You see the sealed walls, hear the whispering name, feel the pressure of forgotten rituals humming through time. You understand now. Tombs weren't just for the dead. They were keys, and every stone you carved, every curse you painted, every chamber you sealed, it's all still alive, somewhere in the tapestry of the Duat. You were never just a builder. You were a gatekeeper, quiet reflection. We don't escape the past. We sleep in it, in this eternal field, harvesting dream wheat under a lavender sun. You realize something. The tombs you helped build, they outlived empires, outlived pharaohs, outlived gods even, but they also trapped your soul inside them, not in a bad way, in a legacy way. Your hands shaped eternity, and even if your name was erased, your work wasn't. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real secret of ancient Egypt. They didn't build monuments to death. They built reminders to live carefully, because someone, some god, some worker, some channel viewer 3,000 years later might still be watching. The tomb is sealed, but you're still inside it. You've crossed the Duat. You've faced gods, monsters, your own heart on a scale. You've earned your eternal rest. And yet, somehow, here you are, still haunted by chisel echoes, still feeling stone dust in your lungs, still smelling hot torches and old blood. You didn't just build a tomb, you became it. Let's be honest, you wouldn't last a day. Not because you're weak, not because you're soft, but because you're modern. You've got Spotify playlists and Google Maps and ergonomic chairs. You panic if your phone battery hits 9%. You sneeze near a dusty window and call in sick. Imagine waking up at 4 a.m., marching barefoot across limestone cliffs, carving sacred texts by firelight with broken fingernails, all for a man who thought he turned into a god when he sneezed. That was life, and you wouldn't last a day in it. But here's the secret. No one told you. You were never meant to. The tomb crew didn't just survive. They chose meaning over comfort. They could have built huts. They could have fished the Nile and slept under palm trees. But they chose something harder. They chose purpose. To build something they'd never live. To see completed. To honor someone they didn't know. To obey rituals they didn't fully understand. Why? Because the world made more sense when it was sacred. Even suffering had a blueprint. And what about us? We scroll, we tweet, we binge. But deep down, we still build tombs. Just with different tools. We build legacies through code, music, photos. We chase permanence in a world that keeps buffering. But here's what ancient Egypt reminds us. You don't need to live forever. You just need to matter long enough to leave something behind. Maybe not a pyramid. Maybe not a golden coffin guarded by riddles. Maybe just a story, a lesson, a truth whispered forward. Final thought before you close your eyes. Next time you pass a museum artifact behind glass, or walk through the ruins of some forgotten temple, remember that stone was carved by someone like you. Tired, confused, hopeful, human. They didn't have machines. They had meaning, and they poured that meaning into every block, brushstroke, and breath. So tonight, as you drift off, don't just sleep through history. Let it whisper. Let it remind you. You may not last a day in their world, but you can honor it in yours. The tomb is sealed, but your story is not. Thanks for watching. If this journey moved you, hit that like. maybe subscribe, and share this with someone who thinks history is just dates and dust. Let's wake the past together.